On a quiet, dark night, a truck sped past and suddenly collided head-on with a girl. Two men, in a panic, got out of the truck to check and found the girl lying on the ground, barely alive. One of them wanted to pick her up and take her to the hospital, but the other hurriedly stopped him. They were drunk driving and feared that if the girl survived but became a vegetable, they would have to take care of her for life. So, these two heartless scumbags threw the girl down a slope and fled the scene. At that moment, an unknown creature lurking in the bushes was attracted by the commotion and quickly rushed in front of the girl. She woke up instantly from the sharp pain, and in the next second, she was dragged into the endless darkness by the mysterious creature. The following morning, the girl's father rushed to the police station in distress, reporting that his daughter hadn't returned home all night. Meanwhile, a couple camping in the wild accidentally found a book, with a severed arm hanging from it. The police rushed to the scene upon hearing this and discovered several more body parts scattered nearby. From the damage, the police preliminarily concluded that it was an extremely brutal dismemberment case. This area had originally been a peaceful, crime-free tourist spot. On holidays and weekends, tourists from all over the country flocked here to enjoy a leisurely vacation. However, strange incidents had recently begun occurring in the village. One night, a man got up and accidentally rolled down a slope into a pit, which turned out to be an unearthed grave. Terrified, he scrambled to escape but heard a faint growling from a beast. Before he could react, he was pounced on by an unknown creature and dragged into the darkness. When the police arrived at the slope, they were horrified by the gruesome scene. A new officer on the team vomited up his breakfast in shock, and the situation became chaotic. The forensic team quickly examined the remains and found bite marks on the victim, which looked more like the work of a beast than a human. However, in recent years, due to the development of tourist attractions and farms, most of the wild animals in the surrounding forests had been exterminated, so the case remained unsolved and was temporarily shelved. The village chief, eager to protect the local economy, wanted to cover up the matter and asked the police chief to assign officers to ensure tourist safety. But the unexpected still happened. In a crowded orchard, while a couple and their child were picking fruit, the man was suddenly struck and carried off by a wild beast. A nearby officer on duty spotted the incident and quickly opened fire, but the beast moved too fast, and only after several shots did the officer manage to rescue the man. Though the beast wasn't killed, the case now had alleged it was likely a wild boar. Due to the frequent deaths, the police decided to temporarily close the orchard to protect the villagers. However, this decision was met with strong opposition from the locals. The village was in the midst of the harvest season, and tourism was their primary source of income. Without it, they'd lose their livelihood. As a result, the orchard remained open to the public. To ensure safety, the village chief spent 79 yuan to hire a professional hunting team, each member large and heavily armed. The hunting team, following the chief's information, ventured into the mountains and soon discovered a massive footprint. The team leader, Dazhuan, estimated that the boar weighed at least 0.4 tons and didn't seem like an ordinary wild boar. Tensions rose among the team as it seemed an intense battle was inevitable. At nightfall, they set traps in the mountains and waited until dawn when the boar finally appeared. The hunters surrounded the boar, intending to drive it into the trap. The camping couple also showed interest in the boar. Just as the man was about to check it out, the boar knocked him down with a scream. The startled boar accidentally stumbled into the trap. The team quickly fired several shots, and they cheered at earning their 79 yuan, though Dazhuan had a bad feeling it wasn't as big as he had anticipated. The next day, the village held a press conference where the chief showcased the captured man-eating boar, drawing media attention. Since killing a 600-pound wild boar was rare in the entire country, Dazhuan became a local celebrity. However, the victim girl's father, Old Park, sensed something was wrong. As a former hunter, he deduced from the boar's teeth that it was unlikely to be a man-eater, and it was just a sow. There had to be a larger male boar. The chief dismissed Park's concerns as nonsense. To verify his theory, Old Park decided to personally dissect the boar, which finally died. Inside its stomach, he found some poultry remains and a torn magazine, but no human tissue. Park concluded that the boar must have shared its food with its mate, and that the true killer was the boar's male partner. Now that they had killed the sow, the male would surely seek revenge. News outlets reported that the boar's attack was an accident, and people believed the crisis was over, doubting the existence of a second man-eating boar. A celebration feast was held in the village, with the boar roasted and served. As the villagers celebrated, the objects on the tables began to tremble. Only a nearby hyena noticed, as the giant male boar was now descending the mountain for vengeance. The 300-kilogram sow had been killed and roasted, and the 600-kilogram male boar, furious, came down for revenge. The villagers were still in high spirits, unaware of the impending disaster. Dazhuang noticed something hitting the iron gate and felt something was wrong. Amidst the noise, he fired a warning shot, and only then did people realize the danger, hiding in corners in fear. The officers ran faster than the civilians. A few brave villagers blocked the door with tables, but the boar continued ramming it furiously. Helpless, Dazhuang fired at the boar, but it only enraged the beast more. It smashed through the wall, and though Dazhuang kept firing, the bullets barely scratched its thick skin, further exciting the boar. Enraged by the sight of its mate roasted on the table, it shattered the lights and plunged the room into darkness. The villagers cried out in terror, fleeing for their lives. One villager attempted to use a grass cutter on the boar, but the blade shattered and hit a young man in the hip. The police chief tried to climb onto the rafters, but the boar broke the pillar, causing him to fall, and it bit his ankle before dragging him away. Another villager threw a sickle but was immediately knocked senseless. The scene was filled with screams and chaos. Many villagers were killed or injured, and despite Dazhuang's best efforts, the boar's tough hide deflected the bullets. When the boar stared at Dazhuang, he was so terrified he wet himself. The boar, disgusted by the smell of urine, left him alone, picked up its mate, and hurried away. When Old Park and the officers arrived, the scene was a mess. Old Park found Dazhuang, trembling in the corner, and told him that the beast had a kind of spiritual sense. The villagers roasting and eating the sow had enraged the boar, and it would surely come back to attack them. Such a beast couldn't be left alive, they had to strike first. Humiliated, Dazhuang knelt before the villagers who had been killed by the wild boar and swore to avenge them. Afterward, he carefully cleaned his rifle and sharpened his bullets. Old Park also decided to come out of retirement, dusting off his 82-year-old hunting rifle, and formed a pig hunting squad with a few young men. Old Park was the team leader, and they headed into the mountains to track down the giant boar. However, after searching for half a day, they found nothing but some animal carcasses, no trace of the man-eating boar. As night fell, they reached the depths of the mountains and came across an 80-year-old young man living there. The elderly man kindly took them in, confirming that a giant boar had indeed been spotted in the area. He warned them against provoking it, explaining that the boar was an experiment left behind by scientists during the war. The beast had been enhanced, its massive body could charge through 20 centimeters of steel, and bullets had little effect on its thick skin. He advised them to leave the mountain first thing in the morning, warning that trying to fight it was like hitting a stone with an egg. But the group didn't take the old man's words seriously. The next day, they continued their trek into the mountains and finally discovered the giant boar's massive footprints. They scouted the area and found an abandoned tiger trap on the mountain. Old Park was thrilled, thinking that with some minor repairs, it could still be useful. Dazhuang set up sensors nearby and tied explosives to a tree stump, then followed the tracks to continue the search. Soon they found a pile of wild boar droppings, which Erchui even tasted, remarking that it was fresh, though a bit smelly. They also found more massive footprints and concluded that the boar was within 100 meters of their location. Following the tracks, they arrived at a mysterious cave, which they determined was the boar's lair, though none dared to enter. Dazhuang threw a tear gas canister into the cave, but when there was no reaction, they mustered the courage to go inside. The boar wasn't home, only a few recently weaned piglets were. Fearing the piglets would grow up to harm people, Dazhuang mercilessly killed them, draining their blood. Erchui kept one for roasting as a suckling pig, and they poured gasoline on the others and burned them alive. The piglets' agonized squeals reached the ears of the giant boar. As the group prepared to leave the cave, they came face to face with the returning boar. With a roar, the boar charged at them, its tusks bared. The group fled in terror, with the boar in hot pursuit. They ran down the treacherous mountain paths, causing the enraged boar to tumble and roll as it gave chase. When they reached the foot of the mountain with nowhere left to run, they dove into a drainage pipe. As the boar approached, it managed to jab one officer in the rear, but fortunately, the boar was too large to fit into the pipe, so it gave up. Thinking the ordeal was over, they didn't expect the boar to return to its lair, only to find its piglets roasted into crispy suckling pigs. Enraged, the boar let out a furious roar, vowing revenge. Late that night, the sensors triggered an alarm. De Zhuang woke to check it out, initially relieved to find it was just an antelope that had set it off. But in the next moment, the cunning boar silently appeared behind him. De Zhuang could only draw his steel knife and fight for his life, his screams waking the others. When they arrived, De Zhuang was being savagely mauled by the boar, barely clinging to life. Old Park tried to fire his rifle, but it jammed. In a critical moment, he opened a red umbrella, and the others took cover behind it. The boar, drawn to the umbrella, allowed Old Park to lead it like a bullfighter into the trap, allowing the others to escape. But the trap couldn't hold the boar, and as it struggled to break free, the group tried to carry De Zhuang to safety, only to realize he was near death. At that moment, the piglet in Erchui's pocket suddenly squealed, and the boar, hearing its child's cry, mustered a surge of strength and broke free. The group had no choice but to abandon De Zhuang and flee once again. The boar chased after them, and the four split into two groups. Erchui and one officer held up the piglet to distract the boar, while Old Park and another officer ran down the mountain to get help. Seeing its piglet, the boar went into a frenzy and chased after them. Erchui and the officer accidentally slipped, rolling some 300 meters down into the mud. The boar charged up to them but hesitated to attack, not wanting to harm its child. At that moment, a giant python appeared and attacked the boar, giving the two a chance to escape. They ran into a tunnel and jumped onto a rail car. The boar continued its relentless pursuit, and the two desperately worked the handbrake on the rail car. Eventually, they reached an abandoned factory, seemingly shaking off the boar. But the officer realized the track ended ahead, and the rail car sped toward it. He pulled the handbrake just in time to stop it. However, they soon heard the boar's growls behind them again. Terrified, they searched for an exit but found the way blocked by barbed wire. The boar charged into the factory, and the two hid in a room. The boar, following the scent, smashed through the glass, forcing them to flee into an underground tunnel. The boar walked overhead, and its saliva dripped onto their faces. At that moment, the piglet's agitation gave away their position, and the boar turned back to block their path. The two quickly climbed up a ladder, with the boar furiously ramming into it. The ladder broke, but they managed to reach a high point and narrowly escaped. Shaken but determined, they decided not to wait for death. Erchui noticed an elevator across from them and came up with a plan to lure the boar into the elevator shaft and crush it with the descending lift. The dangerous task of baiting the boar fell to the officer, who slid down a pipe, injuring his rear again. As soon as he reached the ground, the boar spotted him, but he successfully led it away while carrying the piglet. Meanwhile, Erchui activated the elevator. The officer, still carrying the piglet, ran for his life, successfully luring the boar into the elevator shaft. The boar hesitated, sensing a trap, but hearing the piglet's cries, it charged in to save its child. The officer closed the elevator door, and Erchui pulled the switch, sending the hundreds of tons heavy lift crashing down on the boar. The trap worked. The boar was immobilized, letting out anguished howls, pleading for its child to be saved. Overcome with compassion, Erchui rescued the piglet. However, the officer lit the fuse on a stick of dynamite and tossed it at the boar. With a loud explosion, the boar was blown to pieces. When the officer awoke from unconsciousness, he had become the village's boar hunting hero. They thought it was all over, but the piglet had escaped into the forest. Its eyes gleamed with ferocity, as if foreshadowing another blood-soaked reckoning 18 years later. Audience, did this epic battle between man and beast leave you on the edge of your seat? What do you think will happen next?